ahead.
Yeah.
And then Joy Merlino.
That's me. Hello. I'm Joy Merlino. I work with Kevin at Capital for Compassion, doing our sales and marketing. Fun fact about me is I was tardy this morning, so we submitted about 1.7 million in funding for rescue missions this morning, so I was wrapping that up.
Which rescue missions were those?
So it's Identity Ministries down in Orlando, Florida, which is housing for violent and sex offenders coming out of prison, directly out of prison. And then the other one was Miracle Hill Ministries in Greenville, South Carolina.
Excellent. Excellent. So, real quick, usually when I talk to a group of people,
I heard you.
normally when I talk to a group of people, they want to know a little bit about my story. So the real quick story is I live in Holland, Michigan. I'm friends with the director of the Holland Rescue Mission, and we were having lunch one time in September 2003. He said, "Kevin, could you write a grant for us?" And I said, "Of course not. I've never written a grant. Get a grant writer." And he said, "Come on, you know us. You know the business world. You'll work for cheap." So he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So in September of 2003, I spent 3 long weeks with my laptop and a bottle of Excedrin cranking out my first grant app. In December, it was awarded $482,000. And then the phone rang, and it was a rescue mission an hour away. And then the phone rang, it was a rescue mission 2 hours away. So started a business. I've got an engineering undergrad, and I do have an MBA with an emphasis on strategic planning, but I've never done a strategic plan because when it hits you right between the eyes, what do? Some people hear that small voice of God. God uses a 2x4 on me. But he does talk to me. It's just not the way that he talks to most folks. So I'll probably be standing up and sitting down over the course of our presentation. I've had 5 spinal surgeries in the last 3 years. So I'm held together by a lot of baling wire. So it doesn't feel good to sit in any position too long. So the name of our funding source, it's the Affordable Housing Program from the Federal Home Loan Bank. And first off, that word federal has a big scary connotation. But this is not the federal government. The Federal Home Loan Bank is a consortium of 11 wholesale banks that are owned by about 6,500 banks, and all they do is lend money to their owners. Have you heard of Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac? They're like Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. They'll buy mortgages from their owners, and they will make advances to them. So wherever you guys live, your bank probably has stock in one of these 11 federal home loan banks. The interesting thing is, by law, through the Community Reinvestment Act of 1989, the federal home loan banks have to give 10% of their net profits away to create affordable housing for low-income persons. And we've taken that definition of affordable housing and applied it to a shelter, to a program, to transitional housing, to a wide variety of stuff. And in the rescue mission world, we actually present rescue mission property as highly subsidized rental property because the Federal Home Loan Bank thinks in terms of rental property. So we've been able to take what you do and present it to this funder in such a way that they can award dollars to that. And over the last 23 years, we've had $380 million awarded out of the source. And so we've tapped this deeper than anyone in the country by far. I guess the other thing is that they're a huge funder to Habitat for Humanity, and they've given away $8 to $10 billion since 1989. If you think about it, if they've given away $8 billion and we've got $400 million, in our 23 years we've gotten 4% of their funding, which is not bad since we've only been around half their time. So this is kind of what the Federal Home Loan Bank wants to do. They want to create affordable housing for low-income persons. Do you guys know any low-income persons? And is your shelter affordable? So the key here is that you can charge rent under this program. Rents can't exceed 30% of someone's income. So that's the federal definition of affordable housing. Housing with rents less than 30%. If you charge nothing, it's even more affordable. So the work that you're doing fits with this really good. It fits with a wide variety of housing. The key here is that the Federal Home Loan Bank wants to invest in housing that will be fielded 15 years into the future. So this is a funding source. If you tap, make sure it's where you want to be for 15 years. Now the converse is, let's say something falls apart 10 years into it, and you got to move for some reason. Well, what's the value of $1 million at 0% interest for 10 years? So the worst case is you just had a loan you had to pay back. So it's not the end of the day if something had to change that way. By the way, as I go through this stuff, feel free to ask any questions. Don't wait till the end, because I've talked this stuff a million times. I know this stuff inside and out. My Durham friends, we've done 4 or 5 projects together. 7.
Just finished it.
Okay, 7. Excuse me. They're smart. They know how to just go at this periodically. And so our 7th, wow.
And this is the first one we've done on a building we got 16 years ago. So when we did it, we thought we can do it again, so we did it again.
So I'd say we've taken 60 projects through the 15 years of compliance. Well, the building made through it that 15 years. Now we're going back to ask for renovation dollars to do some deferred maintenance and fix that building up and harden it up maybe for another 15 years.
Kevin? I just want to get a clarifying question. When you say that amounts have been awarded, are those loans from start to finish, or do they translate into a loan if something should change?
So that's a great question. This is a grant, but on paper it looks like a loan, a forgivable loan with a term of 15 years at 0% interest. So if you had $1 million at 0% interest, 10 years from now, what's that $1 million worth? $1 million, nothing's changed. How much payments have you made in 10 years? 0, so it's $1 million. At the end of 15 years, that goes away. So they want to just say that they've fielded housing 15 years into the future. So they put a lien on the property for the grant amount.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's a great question. They say when you're facilitating, you should never say that's a great question, because then when someone else asks a stupid question, you got to say that's a great question. So this is where the 11 federal home loan banks spread out across the country. So they're regional. Des Moines is the blue. They're huge. There used to be a 12th federal home loan bank, the Federal Home Loan Bank of Seattle. Federal Home Loan Bank in Seattle got in trouble. They fired everybody 3 times, and over the course of 10 years, they couldn't get better, so they just merged them with Des Moines. Now there's 11 instead of 12. So depending on where you are and depending on who you bank, depends on which. We have to have a bank that's a member of the Federal Home Loan Bank sponsor an application. So 6,500 banks owning stock, chances are whoever you bank with can already sponsor a project to the Federal Home Loan Bank. But sometimes, and we'll see on the next page, sometimes there's reasons for maybe going to a different bank. And as you can see, the grant caps sway quite a bit here. And so the Federal Home Loan Banks, they score a grant application on a 100-point scale. And there's about 10 scoring categories. And those categories are similar, but they're nuanced. And so what I mean by that, for right now, the Federal Home Loan Bank in Des Moines has a $3 million grant cap. They give a 10% scoring bump if you're building brand new housing with less than 24 units. And you can ask for up to $150,000 per unit. So if you took a 20-unit building at $150,000, that's $3 million. So this is a great opportunity to go build transitional housing and graduate housing where you can do it without a capital campaign and without any debt. So we've been doing a lot of smaller 20-unit projects the last couple of years because that's where it's at. Sometimes the Federal Home Loan Bank of Atlanta favors renovation projects better than new construction. So it fits really well with what you guys are doing. Pittsburgh has its nuances. They all have some nuances, but they're around the country, and so the question is, where can we get the most money? So will your member bank get us to a large amount of money, or is there a path to a better Better Federal Home Loan Bank with a higher cap. So what is a project? So the Federal Home Loan Bank will fund a project. A project is a piece of real estate defined by a legal description, by a deed. And what you're saying, this is my deed, here's my piece of real estate. On this piece of real estate, I'm going to put 25 units of housing that's going to have program housing, do this for the next 15 years. That can be a project in a grant application to the Federal Home Loan Bank. Every piece of property you have where you're doing some level of housing can be a project at the Federal Home Loan Bank. That's why Durham's done multiple projects. When I first met the folks at Durham, they had bought like 3 city blocks of these little homes. And then when they started doing bulldozer therapy and building bigger buildings, and we were able to combine those deeds and create separate deeds for each of the bigger buildings as we went. So even though the buildings are next door to each other, they're separate deeds. The Federal Home Loan Bank loves supportive housing. They love housing with services wrapped around it. So they love housing that you're serving a special need clientele, such as someone coming out of substance abuse, someone coming out of domestic violence, physically disabled, someone that has some mental illness, something like that. So they're looking at and then homelessness. If you're helping homeless people get off the street. So they like service-rich environments. One of the reasons I think why we're so successful is, first off, we're working with a group of organizations that just fit the funding source better. We're getting over 80% of the projects that we pursue funded from the Federal Home Loan Bank. And well, I said we've gotten $380 million. 100 million of that, 106 million of that's been in the last 2 years. And so the numbers are getting bigger. When we first started the Federal Home Loan Bank, the Dallas had a $250 grant cap. Now they got a $1.75 million grant cap. So it's a little easier to go to a higher number now than it once was. But like I said, there's a 15-year commitment. So just make sure you want to be there for 15 years. 23 years ago, 15 years seemed like a long time. Now that 15 years doesn't seem so bad and goes pretty darn quick. And the work that you're doing, you don't want to be moving it. So I find that usually we haven't had too many problems with people needing to move.
Can I ask a question?
You can, you just did.
Well, I didn't get to the question then. But in terms of financial terms, if I borrow $1 million, okay, at the end of 15 years, that $1 million is no longer worth $1 million in terms of inflation and depreciation. So doesn't that get complicated? You understand what I'm saying?
After 15 years, that $1 million retention just goes away.
Okay, so there's no.
This is a 100% grant.
Uh-huh.
On paper, it looks like a forgivable loan because they want to make sure that you meet the commitment to be there for 15 years. The Federal Home Loan Bank's biggest fear is that someone would take their dollars, build market rate condos, sell them, run off with the money. If you guys did that, guess what? They're not going to come looking for you because you ran off with the money. They're going to go to the bank that sponsored it and say, you member bank, pay this back. So the member bank's going to put a mortgage on your property in the grant amount. And really what the Federal Home Loan Bank is saying is if this project makes financial sense, the sponsoring bank should do the underwriting and make financial sense of it before they send it in to us. And do the background checks on that customer and make sure that this is a viable organization to do that. Because the Federal Home Loan Bank isn't going to go sort out all the applications. So they put a burden on the sponsoring bank, and if you run off with the money, they go to the sponsoring bank and make them pay it back. Now the sponsoring bank has to make, I'm probably getting sidetracked, but it's a good question. The sponsoring bank has to make significant effort to recover the money. If they can show, well, we put a mortgage on it, that's showing that you've done reasonable effort to cover yourself. So there's this paper game that's played. then the opposite side of that is you say, well, what happens if we can't field that housing or there's something goes on with this? The Federal Home Loan Bank doesn't want to foreclose on a rescue mission. That does not make for a nice newspaper headline. It just doesn't play well. So in our 22 years now complete, we're in our 23rd year now applying, we've not had a problem with any of that. Have we had some compliance issues? Sure. But just so you understand, Capital for Compassion, we have 2 people that do nothing but administer awarded dollars. We keep our rescue missions happy, and we keep the funder happy. And you know what, that makes it easier for the funder to award more of our projects because they got to live with it for 15 years too. And so we're doing a service for all of us in that sense.
I don't mean to get ahead of you, but in your map before fire, I did see that Tennessee was highlighted in red. Is that indicating that it's not a state that?
No, that's just the color of the map you use.
Just the color?
Yeah. No, you're not in trouble, and you're not necessarily Republicans, according to the Federal Home Loan Bank. Tennessee falls in the bank district of the Federal Home Loan Bank of Cincinnati. So what that means is if you're a bank and your headquarters is in Ohio, Kentucky, or Tennessee, the only Federal Home Loan Bank that you can buy stock in is Ohio. So that's how they work the system, so they're not somewhat competing with each other. Now you get national banks like Wells Fargo, they're all over. Wells Fargo is part of the Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines, for example.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I can see the end user benefit, being that we're helping underprivileged individuals find stable housing and transition hopefully into better, stable, more productive lives. But what I'm not seeing is there a tax benefit to the people funding this? I don't see where a profit lies in it. I'm just trying to understand.
Why they do it?
Yeah.
They have to is basically the answer because of the
Okay.
Community Reinvestment Act of 1989. For those of you who have hair color my color, or maybe not so much hair, you probably remember the savings and loan collapse.
Yeah.
So when the savings and loan industry collapsed, the government went in and they bought bonds to pay that back. They made bond payment. 20% of the Federal Home Loan Bank's earnings went to pay those bonds back. And then they created this program of giving 10% to this.
Okay.
And then in lieu of that, the Federal Home Loan Banks don't pay any federal taxes. So you were hitting on it. You were pulling that thread.
Yeah.
It was a bigger answer.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate that.
John, they also, we use Truist for all of, with EUT, Merlino, we use Truist for every single one of them except this time.
Yeah.
The advantage for Truist is they also get us as a customer on a day-to-day basis.
That's
in all
right.
three divisions. So
That's right.
they're wanting to help us so that they keep our money
Yeah.
and invest it correctly. This is the first time we stepped out last time to go to Pittsburgh, it didn't work out, but we're using mechanics and farmers to do this one,
Okay.
just to try something.
And the further answer to that question is your local bank needs to get what's called Community Reinvestment Act points. So banks' charters can grow if they're doing so much lending in low-income areas. And so if you get a grant and you do some level of interim bank financing, you got 3-year pledge, you're going to finance those pledges through that bank that sponsors, they get CRA credit for doing this. So this is all about
That
CIA.
100% answers. Thank you so much. I knew I was missing something,
We'll let you fill out the next.
There's always 3 levels of data, so I just start here and see how far down we want to go.
You guys laugh at that, but that to me would be interesting. And it's like when someone hands you those keys for the first time again.
Yeah.
It says they trust you. That means a lot.
It's not hard. They do a great job of guiding and telling you what to provide. You just provide the information.
Yeah.
So as an organization, we don't write the grant, we let that be, that's your job.
Well, you can hire us. You can apply on your own.
Okay.
We don't recommend that you do it because you're just never going to do it often enough to get really good at it. For example, the first grant I got $482,000, but I left $280,000 on the table because I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
And so we're still finding ways. So our goal is to take whatever fee you pay us, net that out from the grant, and still get you more money than you would have got on your own, plus take care of this for 15 years. Because you know what happens? Your person that does the reporting for you, 7 years from now, they change jobs. Okay, they go away. Well, we're still here. We're a company.
Right.
And we're on. This is the second generation. I got a bunch of young, talented people working for me, and we're as a company are taking care of administration. We'll be there for your full 15 years, regardless of who works for you. We do a lot of retraining. Yes, Randy, right?
Yeah. Probably an obvious question and answer, but there's no strings tied to the grant as far as religious organization, religious services requiring sobriety, having a biblical statement of marriage and family, that type of thing?
Let me go here, right here, the strings.
Oh, and you didn't even pay me to go there, did you?
I had to skip a chart. You're one chart ahead of me.
Sorry.
That's all right. I'm not sure what. We can weave this story anyway. We'll get it all covered before our time's up. But the strings, this is brick and mortar funding only. So it's to build something new, to buy something, or to renovate what you own. There's 15 years retention. And the third bullet gets to Randy's point. The project must comply with the fair housing laws as they apply to faith-based organizations. So the Fair Housing Act says you can have chapel service and you can have all these things as long as it's not done on a stereotypical level. For example, you just make all black people go to chapel and you don't make the rednecks go to chapel. Or you just make all the rednecks go to chapel and not the other people. As long as everyone has to go to chapel, that's fine. And so there are protections under here. We had one challenge with this in the 23 years that we've done this. And we did hire a law firm. They wrote some legal opinions, and we rallied some senators around it and put that down. Because we can't circle our wagons because of our faith. We've got to fight. And so we're ready to fight, but there is protection here as far as your faith.
Thank you.
You know, I think the Federal Home Loan Bank at Des Moines last time said, do you ban people to be Christians? And the answer is, of course not. The people that work there are Christians, and they teach from a Christian worldview, just like anyone else would teach from their perspective. Excuse me. Should we go back and see what I skipped?
Can.
So what is the funder like? You don't have to be a nonprofit. They score these things on a 100-point scale. And all they do is they put the grant applications in a big pile from the high scoring to the lowest scoring. They grab the top one. Here's the funding pool. This one wants a 1.5 million. Here's a 1.5 million they set aside. And they just go down through this stack of applications till they consume the pool. If they have more money here, they go deeper. If they have less money, they go more shallow. And so what we do is we go to the Federal Home Loan Bank at the end of each funding round and say, the last application that was awarded, what score did it get? And they'll give us a number. And what we find is that number varies from bank to bank because they have different funding pools, they have different strategies, they have different things they want. And then we look at your project and say, okay, you want to do this, what funding, what score will it get? Can we beat that threshold? Has there been any funding changes? Has there been any rule changes? And then we do our calculus to find out what's the best way to strategize for your project. But nonprofit is a funding criteria. There's points for being a nonprofit. So for-profits can participate in this funding stream. They're just at a disadvantage right out of the gate. They like to be serving low-income persons. That's what you guys are doing. Homeless and special needs is huge in this process. local bank participation, lots of services. They like to see some of the federal home loan banks like to see energy efficiency. Down south, they like to see that you've done hardened roofs. And are you aligning with community goals? The one thing, as I was explaining how they go through down this pile of funding, this is an all or nothing thing. If you present an application for $1 million, you either get $1 million or you get nothing. So it's not like you say ask for $1 million, they come back and say 500,000. You know why?
No, that's why they're gonna answer the question.
Well, the answer is that your project has a $500,000 gap.
Right.
It's got a problem, it's not ready. So if they don't fund you with what you proved you needed, then they made the project unviable. So they either give you all or they don't give you anything. So it's all or nothing.
They want their money contributed to something that's actually gonna make a difference.
Correct.
Yeah,
They like to make an award and see a building appear
yeah,
and people being served.
yeah.
And so, yeah. So here's just a thought on just a project that's $10 million. And just how to pull that together. There's a lot of capital campaign consultants around here, correct? And typically you get a capital campaign consultant unless you've done it a million times. And you're gonna go out and you're gonna go to the community and you're gonna come up with some money. Then you're gonna go to foundations and come out with some money. And what we're suggesting is that maybe you put a little equity in a federal home loan bank grant, and that's how you do a $10 million project. The beauty of these dollars, these don't cannibalize $1 in your local community. This is new money into what you're doing. That's the beauty. And this is on a $10 million project, but we gave you the example of 20 units. What if you could make graduate housing without having a capital campaign? So yeah, we've helped a lot of smaller startups get from nothing to getting several buildings by just leveraging this.